Welcome back to Learn Everyday English. I'm Sarah, and I'm here with my awesome co-host, John.
Hey everyone! Today's episode is all about those frustrating moments when you just can't remember a word in English. We've all been there, right?
Oh, definitely. Forgetting words is such a common experience for language learners. It can feel so frustrating when you know a word but just can't pull it up when you need it. But the good news is, there are some simple tricks that can make recalling vocabulary a lot easier.
Exactly. If you're tired of that tip of the tongue feeling, stay with us. We'll share techniques that can make words stick better in your mind and be ready when you need them most.
Yep, so if you're ready to start improving your memory and making those words stick, let's get into it. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected with all our latest tips on learning English. First, let's talk about why it's so easy to forget words when learning a new language. John, what's going on in our brains when we forget?
Great question, Sarah. So, the main thing to understand is that our brains prioritize information based on how often we use it. Words we don't use frequently just don't get stored as deeply, and this happens with all kinds of information, not just language.
Right. And sometimes, it's not just about frequency, but also about connections. If we don't connect a word to something meaningful, like an experience or an emotion, it's easy for it to slip away. That's why words you don't use often or don't relate to tend to be the hardest to recall.
Exactly. The brain works through associations, so the more we can create links between new words and things we already know or care about, the easier they are to remember. So let's get into some tricks that help with that. Alright, let's start with using words in context. One of the best ways to remember a word is to use it in a sentence that relates to your life. For example, if you're learning the word explore, don't just repeat the word by itself. Instead, try saying something like, I want to explore new places this year.
Exactly. When you use the word in a sentence, it's no longer just an isolated word. You're placing it in your life, your thoughts, and your experiences. It adds meaning and makes the memory stronger. Plus, if you use that sentence a few more times over the next day or two, it helps reinforce the word even more.
Another trick that works really well is visualization. When you hear a new word, try to create a mental image. For example, if the word is sunshine, imagine a warm, sunny day. Maybe you're at the beach or in a park. Visualization helps make the word more memorable by connecting it to a sensory experience.
Yes. I find visualization so effective. It's a quick technique, but it's powerful because it makes the word feel more personal and real. When you can picture something, it's much easier to recall it later.
Exactly. Let's also talk about grouping, or what's sometimes called chunking. This is about learning words in related categories. For instance, if you're learning kitchen vocabulary, you could learn spoon, fork, plate, and napkin together as a set.
Right, and it's interesting how the brain loves patterns. When you group similar words, it's like giving your brain a shortcut. You remember one word, and it helps trigger the others in the group. Now, what about those moments when you're in a conversation, and suddenly, the word you need just disappears? It's awkward, but don't worry. There are tricks to handle this too.
One of the best ways to get around this is by describing the word. Let's say you're trying to think of the word airplane. You could say, the thing that flies people through the sky. It's not exact, but it's close enough that the person you're talking to will understand.
Another option is to use a synonym. If you can't think of happy, you might say glad, joyful, or even content. Having a few backup words in your mental toolbox can make conversations flow more easily.
And sometimes, just taking a quick pause to think can work wonders. Pausing actually makes conversations sound more natural, and it gives you a moment to search for that word without feeling rushed.
Yes, and pauses are completely normal in conversations. Sometimes, giving yourself that little moment helps the word come to you naturally.
Absolutely. Language learning is a process, so don't worry about perfection. It's about progress.
Now, let's talk about some exercises you can practice every day to improve long-term memory of vocabulary.
One of the simplest and most effective habits is keeping a daily vocabulary journal. Each day, write down a few new words you've encountered, along with a sentence for each word. At the end of the week, go back and review your entries.
Spaced repetition is also a great tool. Some language learning apps use this method, where they show you words at specific intervals to keep them fresh in your mind. It's based on the science of memory, so it really helps make vocabulary stick.
Mind mapping is another awesome exercise, especially if you're a visual learner. Start with a central word, like travel, and draw branches with related words like destination, adventure, and explore. This approach helps you see connections between words, which makes them easier to remember.
And it's fun, too. Creating mind maps can be a relaxing activity that also boosts memory by creating connections between words.
Before we wrap up, let's quickly go over some common pitfalls to avoid. These can make it harder to remember vocabulary, so it's good to be aware of them.
One common mistake is trying to memorize too many words at once. If you're cramming a lot of vocabulary, you'll probably end up forgetting most of it. Focus on a few words each day, and engage with them deeply rather than trying to memorize huge lists.
Memorizing lists of random words without context can also be challenging. Try to learn words and sentences or stories whenever possible, so they're connected to something meaningful.
Exactly. Vocabulary is more memorable when it's part of a larger context, rather than isolated words on a list. Think of it as building your language skills, one piece at a time. We hope these tips help make remembering English words a bit easier for you.
Thanks for joining us today, and remember, practice makes permanent. Try out these techniques and see which ones work best for you.
See you next time.